Thank you. Just tell us when you go. Tell us when you go live. Okay, we're live. All right, Mike, you're live.
All right. So since we are live, we're going to go ahead and get started. Sorry about the delay for a couple of minutes there, everybody. My name is Michael Keith. I'm the Director of Career Services for the Dave School, as you guys probably all know. Joining us today is our very special guest, Mr. Javier Hernandez. Javier is currently the, I'm sorry if I get it wrong, Art Director for Grover Gaming. Is that correct?
Correct.
So Grover Gaming is a gaming studio up in the North Carolina area. And Javier is a graduate of ours, so we are very excited to have him here today. So without further ado, Javier, the floor is yours.
All right. Is there a way I can share some images?
Let me make you a presenter. There we go. So you are now the presenter.
You want to record? There you
I'm
go.
recording.
You have to forgive me. I don't see the share.
So it's at the very bottom, one of those blue buttons.
I only have audio, leave the call, and webcam.
Yeah, I don't have it either.
Javier, make presenter.
There it is.
There we go. Sorry about that.
No worries. Most of what I have is going to be just talking. I have a few images to show, but I didn't have too much. All right. So my name is Javier Hernandez. Like you said, I'm with Grover Gaming, the art director. Just a little bit of background on Grover Gaming and what we do. So we make casino-style slot games. They're not like the games you find in Vegas. They look like the games you find in Vegas, but they don't play the same way. So there's different classes of slot games. Oops, I'm not going to do that. We make charitable gaming games. So they look just like a slot game, and the way that works is the different states, all the different markets we have. The games go there, and they work. We partner with the charitable charities in those states, and different customers will buy the games and run them in their stores. So like VFWs, a lot of like gas stations in Georgia, things like that. They'll have the games there, and then the profit that those games make, a big portion of it goes to charities, and that's how we can legally put the games out in a state that maybe gambling isn't legal in. And that's what we do right now. We are working on getting into Class 2 gaming, which is like your tribal casinos, those games, and in the background, you're basically playing bingo in those games, and it's just displaying your wins in entertaining fashion. That's Class 2 gaming, which we're working on getting into right now. And then there's Class 3 gaming, which is the Vegas-style random slot games that you find in Vegas. That's what we're heading towards. We're not there quite yet. There's also Class 1 gaming, but that's more of like traditional tribal games they play, and then they'll bet money on those. No one makes any machines for that market. So that's basically a little bit about Grover Gaming. We're in North Carolina, in Greenville, North Carolina. We are rapidly growing. I've been here for about 7.5 years. When I started, I was employee number 29 a long time ago, and we're over 350 employees now. I started as a 3D artist, and now I'm the art director. So I was just going to go through a little bit of my story and my journey of how I got here, from knowing I wanted to be an artist to getting into Dave School, and then some about my career, and then I'll open up for any questions. So the early years. I was born in Puerto Rico, and I left when I was 2 years old. We moved to Texas, and then from Texas, we moved to Florida in 1986. Sounds like a forever ago. We moved there, and then I was 6 years old when we moved there, and I always loved like the Disney 2D animation, the Lion Kings and Little Mermaids and all those movies. And I always wanted to be an artist of some sort. I always wanted to make those movies, but I was never really good at 2D art and drawing. So I never believed that I could do it. And I remember kind of giving up on that dream, or like not thinking that it was an attainable dream. And then one day I saw Toy Story, the movie Toy Story, which is a lot of people's first 3D movie. And I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that it was awesome, and I really liked it, and I really wanted to do that. But again, we have no artists in my family. I didn't have a background of that, so I just didn't think that I could do it, and just kept living my life and going to school and doing me. I went through high school not thinking I could be an artist. After high school, I'd worked retail jobs. My brother actually got into selling insurance, and I got into his agency with him, and I was working with my mother, a couple of my brothers. We were working there, and one day my mom and my brother came to me, and they basically had like a little intervention with me. They told me they noticed that I just wasn't happy and didn't like doing what I was doing, and they encouraged me to kind of follow my dreams. And that day I started looking online for schools to learn 3D, looking to see what I could do, and I found the Dave School. And that's when I really started getting into it and trying to get into the Dave School. But I skipped over a little bit. I wanted to talk about my first steps into anything 3D. This was probably in high school, maybe a little bit before high school. So in like 90s, I started playing a little bit with Bryce 3D and Poser. I don't know if anyone's ever seen those programs. It was very, very early 3D programs. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just messing around trying to make some cool art. I made some crazy like fractal stuff, and I think I made an album cover for my brother, who's a DJ. But I do remember learning a couple terms, anti-aliasing and inverse kinematics, which are obviously very well known. But at the time, I didn't know what they were, and I remember thinking, like, wow, these are like really big terms. Like, I don't know what these mean. Like, I didn't even know where to look for this stuff. And again, didn't think I could do it. Didn't think I could be an artist. I remember going into high school, and there was a robotics club. And in that robotics club, there was like a sect of that club that was all about doing 3D and doing 3D presentations to show off the robot that the team was making. I started going to that robotics class just to learn 3D. And I remember the teacher was like, "Oh, I'm not a 3D teacher or anything like that. I don't do the robotics." And he just walked up and gave me the manual for 3D Studio Max and walked away and said, "Learn, do what you want." And again, that's why I tried to do something. I do remember making like a pyramid, and I made it like move and then shatter, because Max has a shatter button. And I thought I was hot stuff. And then there was like a sixth grader next to me, and he was making spaceships flying around planets. And I was just so like amazed by what he could do. And like I was kind of demoralized a little bit. Like, I'm never going to do this. And I never kind of pursued it any further. But then fast forward to working at the insurance agency, and when my brother and my mother had that intervention with me, like I said, I looked for schools that day. I was working full time, and I came across the Dave School, and I thought it was really awesome that they had a night class. Our class was from 5:30 to 10:30. So once I found that class, I was like, "Oh my God, this is it! I want to go. I'm going to dedicate myself to this, and I'm going to learn this. I'm going to change life, basically." I applied that day, I think, for the Dave School. I went online and got admissions. I made an appointment to go do the tour, and then I got the application, and I was very, very enthused. I do remember when I was filling out the application, I don't know if this is still on the application, but there was the last question was show the proof of creativity, which I loved for some reason. I love that idea that the question on the application to get into the school was showing proof of creativity. So I took pictures of all kinds of little clay things that I would make. And I was always a creative person, but I just never thought I could do the art. And then I went out and started trying to get loans. I had to get 2 loans to go to school. I got a Sallie Mae loan, and then I think it's TFT. I can't remember the other company, but I had to get 2 loans to go to school, and it was a big deal because I wasn't, you know, my parents weren't paying the loans. It was me going to pay the loans. I did have to have my father co-sign and my grandmother co-sign, so I took it very seriously. And then started going to school. I made a deal with my brother he would let me off at 4 o'clock. I would work full time during the day, get off at 4, go change, and drive over to the school. Sometimes I'd get there a little bit early, so we were able to go ride the mummy before class started, which we thought was really nice. So then day school, so I'm class of 2006, June 2006. We made teddy scares. Just give you a little backstory on what class I was in. The first day of day school was amazing, I think. I went in and we did the tour. We went to go ride Spider-Man was what we were riding with Sam Mendoza. I don't know if he's still there. But we went and did that, and then we did the tour. And I remember that very first day learning you got a teddy scare right there? Oh, nice. I remember learning the answers to those 2 words I didn't know. So I learned what anti-aliasing was and what inverse kinematics was in the tour. And I was just over the moon. I thought that was great. Like 2 terms that I had seen and didn't know what they were. And I learned it on the first day in the tour. And I just remember having a really strong feeling of being at the right place at the right time. So everything was going well, and I just felt like I was where I needed to be. Day school was tough. It was a lot of work. It was a very intense year. The way I like to describe it is I lived with my parents and I didn't see them. I lived with my father, and he would go to work before I woke up, and I would go to work, and then I would go to school. I'd get off at 10:30, and we'd stay in class till probably like 12:30, and then I'd come home and he'd be asleep. So by the time I'd get up the next day, he'd be gone. So I'd go weeks without seeing him. I lived there because I lived at the school. I was just trying to, you know, soak it all in and be the best I could. It was very stressful. I'm sure you guys have gone through a lot of stress in your schooling. But the way I kind of dealt with it is I identified it as welcome stress. Obviously, everything is, you know, school, stressful, learning, trying to change your life, get into a new career. It's very stressful. And most people think stress is a negative word. Like when you hear, oh, I'm stressed, or this is stressful, it usually comes off as a negative thing. So I tried to flip that around and make it a positive. So everything I've used this throughout my whole career is anytime anything is stressful, or I'm doing something new, something unknown, and I feel that stress, I just say, you know what, this is welcome. So I'm welcoming this stress into my life so that I can better myself. And it kind of worked out for me. I also adopted the mantra of good things will happen. So that was kind of like my saying, and I would repeat that to myself when I was scared of, you know, I wasn't going to do something, I wasn't going to be able to be good enough. So I just always, you know, recite to myself, good things will happen, you know, and I don't know if that helped, but it helped calm me down and keep me focused on what I needed to do. I also kind of made the decision in my mind when I was at the day school that it was going to be all or nothing. You know, I wasn't here to just go to school because my parents wanted me to go to school. I wasn't here to waste time or waste money. I was paying these loans off, like I said. So it was all or nothing. I'm not going to fail. Like, that's not even an option. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to do whatever it takes to succeed. And that was kind of how I got through the day of school in that year. And then I've used those same 3 things throughout my career. So a little bit about the school and while I was there, just some things I remember. In Block 1 with Tom Henry, I don't think he teaches there anymore. But the first thing we learned, which I'm sure you guys have all learned, is save often and save revisions. I took that to heart, and I would save probably too many revisions than I should have. I think some of the projects I worked on had 300-400 revisions, which is crazy. Now I do a lot better, but back then I was saving very many revisions. Sometimes I would save revisions, multiple revisions with no changes, just because I wasn't sure the last time I saved. We did the Viper model in block 1 for modeling. I do remember putting up the Battlestar Galactica, the original show, on the projector, and when we were watching the show while we were modeling, which I thought was just a really fun thing. It's like, oh, it's cool. You get to go to, where you get to like watch TV and shows while you're working on making what you see in the TV. It was just a really fun feeling. And then we moved on to animation with Dave West. I do remember making our first run cycle and walk cycle. We had a character that was given to us called the Ninja Chick. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but it was like this ninja girl, and that was the character that was given to us as a character modeling assignment and our animation assignments. And I have this memory of animating her running, and we were just supposed to make her run. We rigged her and making her run, and I remember like putting a little bit of boob bounce in the animation, and for some reason thinking that I was going to get in trouble or something, like, oh, this is like, oh, someone's going to think I'm a pervert or something. And the Dave West went around, and he started going around looking at everyone's screen and kind of giving me some feedback. I got so nervous. I was like, oh no, this is going to be bad. And I remember he came, walked up behind me, and he looked, and he leaned in a little bit. He looked a little bit, and he like turned to me. He goes, are they bouncing? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, that's a good job. Like, they would. That's how that, that's good. That's good. So I thought that was just amazing. Just the fact that I did that, and it was taken well, because that's what would happen in animation. And it was about that time in the animation block that I realized I had been animating since I was a kid, and I just didn't know it. I love toys, as I'm sure most of you do, and I love Ninja Turtles. That's the theme I love the most. But my favorite physical toy was G.I. Joes. I love them because they articulated in the elbows and in the knees. So I was the kid that was literally animating my toys. Like some kids now, they just bash the figures together and they're like, oh, they're fighting. But no, I was the kid that was out there like actually moving each body part and like basically animating with my toys. I didn't record it or anything, but I realized that while I was in school, that I've been doing that for my whole life. We did a compositing class with Dave West as well. And then we went on to our block 4, which is Teddy Scares with William Vaughn was our teacher for block 4. And I learned so much from him. I do remember in block 4, one of the times that, again, I was scared and I just said, good things will happen, and welcomed it, was the main character for our assignment was a Cyrus, the one-eyed bear. And we had a student in our class, I can't remember his name right now, but he was the character guy. He modeled characters day in, day out since block 1, to the point where when we started block 4, I think he had somewhere like 200-300 characters modeled. So it was just like, you know what, he's the guy, like he's the character guy, and everyone kind of accepted it and was like, yep, that's fine, like he's the guy that's going to do the characters. So he got assigned the main character, and it became quickly evident that he didn't really use reference when he was modeling his characters. Like his characters were good, they weren't bad, but he didn't practice like using reference. So when he was modeling that character, it wasn't really coming out close enough to the reference. So he got taken off, and it was assigned to me. When I got it, I was scared. I was like, oh man, like I'm supposed to model this character. But one thing we learned from William and just from everyone at the Dave School is you say yes. Whenever you get an opportunity, you say yes, and then you figure it out. So yeah, I just said, yeah, I can do it, no problem. And I did. I was real scared because I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to try. And I ended up modeling the character fine, and it worked out pretty well. But the most important things I learned at Dave School I would say besides like the actual learning of programs and stuff like that, is just problem solving. You'll know, I don't know how many programs you guys have used for 3D, but every 3D program, modeling program, they basically have the same tools. They're just a different button or a different word. And you just got to find where it is. Everyone's has an extrude, has a Boolean. They all have a lot of the same tools. And if you can learn how to solve the problems that you're having, as opposed to knowing exactly what button to push, you'll be able to jump between programs pretty easily. So problem solving was probably the biggest thing I learned, and then collaboration. So I've never worked a day in my life solo on a project. So collaboration is extremely helpful and extremely useful when you're out in the industry. And then teamwork. I see some people were saying teamwork and networking. Teamwork, again, never worked a day in my life by myself. You're always working with teams, and you have to learn how to deal with people. And then also, obviously, the networking. Just knowing people, getting to know other artists, having other artists know who you are can vastly help you find jobs and stay in the industry. So that's basically my quick overview of just kind of my Dave School years. And then after Dave School, I started going into my career. I graduated Dave School, and right after I graduated, I was offered the job at Monkey Chow, Chef Sheets production company, to work on Once Upon a Christmas Village. I actually took a pay cut to take that job. I was just so excited about working in the industry and being part of a production that I was like, I don't mind making less money to start my career. As far as I know, I was the only artist that was on that project from the start to finish. We had modelers come in and then slowly switched out with people rigging. We did mocap, texturing, animation, but I was on that project throughout the whole project from the beginning to the end. And I have really good memories of that project. I do have a picture of the production team that I found. I was looking through old pictures. This was this is the team at Monkey Chow that worked on Once Upon a Christmas Village. Very old picture, but that's us. We got cigars gifted to us at the end for wrapping. So that's all of us smoking cigars and taking pictures behind the building. When I was in school, we weren't technically in the back lot. We were still kind of just outside the back lot. I need to go see the new facilities. But that was that gig. And then after Monkey Chow, I went to a place called Wolfhound. It was a freelance gig that was just over there in Longwood, Florida. Did some random kind of small things. They would just did freelance for anybody that they could find. I think the biggest project I worked on there was a safety video for like a private cruise ship. So I was modeling or animating characters riding on jet skis and putting on life vests and things like that. It wasn't the most prestigious work, but it paid the bills. After Wolfhound, I was talking to Jeff Sheets, and he mentioned an opportunity with AC Coin and Slot in New Jersey. I unfortunately couldn't take up some of the opportunities that came up my way to go straight to LA and work internships. I wish I could have, but I was working full time and having to pay all my own bills. And I couldn't justify moving across country for an internship. But if you can, I definitely recommend it. It's all those guys are now working in big studios. Anyway, so I started at AC Coin and Slot through the recommendation of Jeff Sheets, and that was my first slot game company. They made class 3 slots, the ones you play in Vegas, and it was nice. I moved up to New Jersey. I was there for about a year and a half. But at that time, slot machines were still kind of like, oh, well, cool, slot machines. Like, I don't really care about them too much. I saw that job as a stepping stone. I'm just going to be here until I can get out into the bigger industry and move on. Reasons for that was because I wasn't really growing artistically. When I started there was two other artists that came from Dave School that were in the class after me, and they started with me. And we had one other artist that was already there that was actually a Dave School graduate as well, but he had graduated a lot sooner than we did, and he hadn't kept up with all the stuff that all the techniques, latest techniques. So there was no one to really learn from. We were kind of working with each other, but no one better to like teach us. So I wasn't growing artistically. I wasn't growing financially because I wasn't making too much money there, or personally. It was a small town in New Jersey. It wasn't much going on. So after about a year and a half, I started feeling stuck. I didn't want to be there anymore. I was trying to get out, trying to get into the industry, and I contacted a couple of the people I knew from school, and I contacted my friend Ben that was working at Radical 3D at the time. They used to hire a lot of Dave School grads. I don't know if they still do, but I contacted him, and I was able to get a test to go to try to work there at Radical. The test was to animate a T-Rex. I actually found that animation. I can pull it up real quick. So this was my T-Rex animation test. They just asked me to take a T-Rex and make him walk, transition to a run, and stop. I was over the moon when I got the test. I did it. They gave it to me as a light wave scene. I animated it, I think in a weekend, maybe a little bit more, and sent it back. I sent the test back, and then I got word that they wanted to hire me. And this is my favorite story about the you just say yes mentality. Is as soon as they said that they wanted me, I was like, oh cool, yeah, I'm ready to go. They asked me if I knew how to work in Messiah. And I was like, yeah, no problem, I could do it. And they're like, all right, cool, so we'll start in 2 weeks. And I hung up the phone, and I instantly started Googling what is Messiah. I had never heard of Messiah at that time. I kind of freaked out a little bit because I just started Googling like how do I use Messiah? What is Messiah? Luckily, it was an animation. I was a pure animator, so I quickly learned how to make a keyframe, how to open the graph editor. So it wasn't too bad, and that's how I got the job at Radical 3D. The interesting parts about that job was I gave my 2 weeks at AC Coins and Slot the day after the market crashed in 2008. So it was very stressful. It's probably the most stressful time in my career, just because of the unknowns of, is there going to be an industry to go to when I move across the country? I had to fight to get 2 weeks to tell AC Coins and Slot that I was leaving. I was always raised to give 2 weeks to employers, not burn bridges. And like I said, I had to fight and kind of negotiate for them to give me 2 weeks. But it wasn't like 2 weeks and then you had time to move. I negotiated, and all they gave me was 2 weeks so that I finished a day of work in New Jersey, and I had to be in LA for work the next day. So I packed my car a couple days before. I sent that on a car transport. I packed my computer and any game consoles I had, and I sent that UPS. I went out and bought a duffel bag and filled it with clothes. And got on a plane. I remember working full day on Tuesday. I had my friend take me to the airport on Wednesday or on Tuesday night, and I flew to LA. Had a friend pick me up in LA, and then luckily he had a roommate that was moving out, so I had a room to stay in. I had an air mattress that deflated overnight, so I woke up on the floor, and then went to work the next day for a full day's work at Radical. Very nervous and scared, but again, I welcomed that stress, and I knew good things will happen as long as I applied myself, and they did. So I worked at Radical 3D for a little over a year before they started running out of money and had to lay people off, and I got laid off from there. One thing I do regret when I got that job, though, is I do regret not putting my foot in the ocean, on the Atlantic Ocean, and then putting my foot in the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the same day. Thought that would have been a fun thing to do. So after Radical, Radical itself kind of scratched that itch of being out in LA and working on something that's going to be on TV. I mean, I remember for the longest time, my dream was to go to a movie theater, watch a movie, and see my name in the credits. That's what I wanted to do. And Radical kind of gave me that a little bit. I worked on an Animal Planet show, animating dinosaurs in their extinction events. So I did get to see my name like on a TV show, which was cool. But it was very important that I actually had that experience because, like I said, it scratched that itch of wanting to be out in LA. I would have liked to have stayed out in LA a little longer, but I personally don't like the contract work where you work for 3 months, 6 months, and they lay people off. You don't know if you're going to have a job. It's too stressful for me. I much rather have job security. But I was willing to do it to try to be out there and get into those industries. I got laid off from Radical 3D when he ran out of money. And then again, I was looking for work. I was unemployed in LA for about 6 months, looking for work, working on a demo reel. But the market had just crashed, so no one was hiring. I couldn't find anything. And then I started getting a little desperate and started just looking for anything I could. And I started contacting people that I knew that were working anywhere. And again, the networking comes into play here. I found someone I went to school with. I didn't even he wasn't even in my class. His name was Steve Mitchum. He was working at IGT. IGT at that point had a few other day school grads, but I knew Steve the most. I would consider him an acquaintance. But he was able to put my demo reel in front of the right people. And it just so happened that they were ramping up to start a Godzilla slot game. And I had just came off of animating T-Rexes and dinosaurs. So when I got my demo reel to Steve, he put it in front of the people that needed to see it to get me the job at IGT. And I mean, it was luck. There's always a little bit of luck in finding some jobs. But that was kind of revolutionary for me when I started IGT because it wasn't my ideal job. I didn't really want to leave LA yet, but I needed to work. And when I started at IGT, I was kind of shocked because my only experience was AC coin and slot from 4. And I do remember applying and not thinking I got the job. So I applied, I interviewed, and I didn't hear back for about 2.5 months. I thought I didn't get the job. I forgot about the job. I actually went back to Florida to visit my parents because I was like, well, I'm in LA, I got nothing going on. I can afford a ticket and I can save money on food. And when I was in Florida, I received an email that I got the job and I did all my onboarding there. But at IGT, I realized that slot games could be a viable career path for me. It was the polar opposite of IGT. Of AC Quinn and Slot. I started there, and instantly there was a ton more artists working there. They had 2 main studios and a couple of side studios, and there was very talented artists that I was able to learn a ton from. They were doing quality work, at AC Coin and Slot. We had to do what we could. We didn't have very big timelines or budgets, but at IGT we had lots of time. The budget was there, and we were able to do quality work. And I was getting paid well. It was the first job that I can remember that I didn't have to, budget every last little bit. I could save money and build a savings account. And I mean, it was, like I said, it was revolutionary. I realized, hey, slot games aren't a bad way to go, especially if you want stability. This is very stable. Worked there for 5 years, made all kinds of different games. Actually, I can show you the demo reel that I used to get into that job. So this demo reel is probably 12 years old. So it's a little dated, but this is the demo reel I used to get into IGT. So this is after Radical 3D. that's just a sample of some of the work I've done. So after 5 years at IGT, I unfortunately was laid off. It's a very big company, and they go through rounds of layoffs sometimes. And I unfortunately got caught in one of those rounds of layoffs and was let go. After that, I was, again, just looking for work. I tried to stay in the Reno area. I did really like the Reno area, but no one was hiring. I couldn't find work. And I was actually contacted by a headhunter about a job in North Carolina. They didn't tell me the name of the company, but I was a little skeptical. I was curious. I asked the recruiter where they were located, like where the recruiter was located, and they told me in Central Florida. I was like, oh, really? I'm actually heading to Central Florida this weekend to go to my brother's wedding. So I set up an appointment to go meet with the recruiter, which I thought was pretty nice that they were looking for a company in North Carolina, but they were based out of Central Florida. I met with the recruiter, and they told me about the job, and it was through the recruiter that I was able to get the job here at Grover Gaming. This was the only job I've ever gotten that didn't come from a contact that I had made either at Dave's school or at another job. So I was excited to start a new job and to actually work because I had been unemployed for a little bit. As soon as they told me about the job and I interviewed, I started researching the company and what they do, like anybody should. I remember I couldn't find anything on Grover Gaming. I was looking online and I could barely find anything on Grover Gaming. I found an article about how a company called Figure 8 changed their name to Grover Gaming. So I was like, oh, so they were Figure 8 before and they changed the name. So then I started researching Figure 8, and I remember coming across some kind of concerning documents or articles about gray markets, they're called. Nothing illegal, it's just that they're unregulated markets. And I remember being nervous. I was like, I'm moving across the country. I don't know if this is the right thing I should be doing. But I needed work. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go for it. And I'm glad I did. I moved out to North Carolina. I moved in 2014. I started in May 2014. Sorry, in June 2014. But I moved in May. Drove across the country with my father. We got a place here. I do remember driving into North Carolina, driving into Greenville, and we had a week before I had to start working. And I was like, okay, let's turn off the GPS and let's just explore a little bit. And I remember turning off the GPS, and the first road I turned down was like the ghetto, the most ghetto part of the city. And I remember I was thinking, what have I done? Like, why? What did I do? Why am I here? But luckily it worked out. Right after I started, probably less than a year after I started, I almost died. I almost passed away. I used to be a pretty heavy smoker, and we live a sedentary lifestyle. Most of us sitting down at computers for hours on end working, and those two combined didn't really do well for me. And I had a blood clot, or a DVT, a deep vein thrombosis, basically a blood clot, and I had 2 pulmonary embolisms. I went to the hospital for a week. I was in the hospital for a week. I had many doctors and nurses tell me I was lucky to be here. So I took that to heart and I quit smoking that day. Haven't smoked a cigarette since. And that was the first time I realized kind of what company I was working at, because like I said, I was in the hospital for a week and I was at home on bed rest for a couple weeks after that. And my whole art team came down to my house to show me support. They brought me a goodie bag of magazines and things to read and do while I was laid out. I got a lot of support from the company. As soon as I could go back to work, because at that time the company was very small and we didn't have much time off or anything like that. So I felt the need to go back in and keep working. So as soon as I could get up and walk, I went back into work. I remember working in a walker. I had a old person's walker, and I was going to work and just scooting along, trying to get back to my desk and work on the games I needed to get done. I remember the owner of the company and the vice president stayed late one night, and the owner of the company, they saw me working there and they're like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Oh, I got games I need to get done. I need stuff. I got things I need to get done." And they're like, "Oh, we appreciate you being here and wanting to get that job done, but like you're in a walker. Like you obviously need to recover." Like they basically made me go home. But they really appreciated that, and I really appreciated them for acknowledging that. They actually helped me a little bit more than I expected with my medical bills, which I thought was a very, very big thing. That's another big reason that I realized the kind of company I'm working for. So that was a scary moment in my life, but it ended up being positive afterwards. So I was hired as a 3D artist. I worked for couple years here, and at the time we were small. Our team, we only had like 5 or 6 people, and then after a couple years the director started. Is it bad echo in my audio? Let me mute myself and turn that on.
Sorry.
Is it better at all?
Yes.
Okay. What was it? Okay, so I was a 3D artist. After a couple years, the director started to experiment with putting in lead artists. I was lucky enough to be the first lead artist here, followed by a couple others. And we did some experiments on some games. Like, just work with one other artist. At the time, we used to just you were assigned a game and you made the whole game by yourself. But this was the first time that we had 2 people on the game, and we had one person kind of leading the team to try to make the art. Did that, so I became a lead, and I was a lead for 5 years or so. And then just recently, actually this year, we split our studio into 2 studios. We have another studio that went down to Wilmington. Yes, we just opened another studio in Wilmington, and when that happened, we obviously the original art director and programming director and game designer, they opted to go to Wilmington, and I was lucky enough to become the what state is Wilmington? That's North Carolina as well. I was lucky enough to become the art director for the Greenville studio here. This was in August of this year. So just under 7.5 years to go from just a 3D artist to the art director now. So I was very glad and excited to do that. Came with a nice pay raise. I love where I work, and I can't help talking good about it, I guess. And that's been my journey up until where I'm at now, kind of a synopsis of my journey to now to being the art director. Now I'm in charge of a team of 10 artists, and we're trying to grow to 6 teams. Our teams consists of art lead and 3 artists. We have 3 teams now, and we're trying to get to 6 teams in the next couple of years. So that's been one of my big focuses so far, is recruiting and looking for talent, and trying to get artists started and grow out our teams. And then lastly, just had some advice from my career and my perspective on for you grads coming out of the school now. I covered some of it during the talk, but I'll recap. So biggest one is probably networking. As I said, like every job I've gotten besides this job has been because I knew someone, because someone knew me. A little bit of luck involved with the IGT job, but I can't stress the amount of help that networking does. And luckily, networking isn't, it's not a dry thing like it was when I was a kid. And networking was like, oh, you go to mixers and events, and you can still do that, but you can network on an MMO. You can network, through games. You can network through, and there's a lot of different ways to network through social media. So you guys have a lot of opportunities to network and stay in contact with people. So networking is probably the biggest piece of advice I could say. Secondly, don't be a dick. Like just don't. Like, you don't work by yourself. You'll never work by yourself. You'll always work on a team. And if you are hard to work with, no one's going to want to work with you, and you won't last long in any job. We do not do remote working. We are highly collaborative, and we want everyone to be here, unfortunately, for the art team. So we all work on laptops, so we do have the opportunity to work from home if you're sick, or if you're waiting for the cable guy, or things like that. You definitely have the opportunity to work from home for a couple of days. We try to be as flexible as possible, but we do ask that everyone relocates to here when they come to work. But back about not being a dick. We are very big on culture here, so we would much rather have someone that we can mold, that can grow, that is enthusiastic about being here. We would much rather have a person like that than having someone that's super talented but can be not very easy to work with. We've actually passed people because of that. We send out an art test, and if you pass the art test and things like that, your work isn't really in question anymore. It's more about your personality and how you communicate and collaborate. And we do a group critique on your test, and we've had candidates come in, and when we give them a critique, they stop us and say, "Oh, let me tell you why you're wrong," and they tell us why the critique we're giving them is incorrect, and they don't get the job, obviously. So that's the next piece of advice, is just work well with others. There's another question. I see the stylized art portfolio. So we do basically everything we do is stylized. I have some examples of some of the games that we've made, and it's very important to have stylized art on your reel. I get a lot of reels from people that want to be, in AAA games, and they have photorealistic guns on their reels, and I can't really do much with that because we don't do anything like that. I can see where there's talent and lighting and modeling and textures, but it's a lot easier to make a decision on someone if they have stylized work on their reel. So highly recommend, if you want to get into a stylized field, that you put some of that on your reel, or at least tailor your reel to the company you're applying for. You should always be pushing yourself to learn, to grow, to get better. You guys all should know by now that the industry doesn't stop. There's always new programs coming out. There's new techniques. And if you don't keep up with that, you'll get left behind. So you really should always be learning and striving to learn the latest software and the latest techniques. There's plenty of sites like Pluralsight and all these other ones that you can do tutorials on. Even YouTube has a ton of tutorials. I use them all the time. But always try to stay current.
Javier, you and I have talked a little bit about how in the near future, Grover is going to be looking to grow its stable of artists.
Yes.
So you and I are going to be working together towards that. So do you have any last minute advice for any of the potential employees who might be listening? Dave School students who might be future Grover employees, about the kind of stuff they can put on their portfolio to be more attractive.
Yes, so very vibrant, stylized work. Here, I'll show you some of the games. This is just some of the games I've worked on recently. This college rivals football game is probably the most realistic game we've made, but it's still very stylized. But a lot of things we do are get very saturated. Slot games are a very special breed. We are next to thousands of other slot games that are all chiming, blinking, and trying to get your attention. So we don't really do too many subtleties. We like to have bright, colorful imagery to draw players in. So these are just a few of the loading screens from some of the games we've done. So my biggest piece of advice is look into slot games, look into the games we've made, and try to tailor your reel to show off some of the stuff you can do.
Awesome. Well, listen, Javier, we want to thank you so much for your time today. your advice and sharing your story with our students. I think one of the important takeaways from your story is that the future is not always laid out in a nice, clear path for you. Sometimes there's a level of risk, and sometimes there's a leap of faith that needs to be taken. So for any of our students who are listening, you're not always going to get a guarantee with your first job. You know, my first job was in Shreveport, Louisiana, and it was definitely a risk going, but it's paid off for me. Again, just want to say thank you. We have a 4 o'clock event we have to get to, so I'm going to have to kind of cut us off here in just a moment. But if anybody has like a last minute question for Javier, feel free to go ahead and ask it now. Or not.
Is it okay to do it on mic? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering in general, when it comes to looking for a job in the industry, would it be wise to not only look into like the company that you're going into, but talk to former employees to see how they felt about working there?
I'm sure if you want to try to get a more clear picture as to the culture of a company, I definitely think you should. You should always take it with a grain of salt, because you could always get someone that had a bad experience and will talk negatively about a company. But I think it's definitely a good thing to try to find former employees and get a little bit more of an insight of how that company works.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Nina, you'll be our last question. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so the question is about spending too long on a project, more than you should, and how do you get past that? So it's a skill that you have to learn. Really, we do production art, and in production art, like, you can't marry your work. That was one of my last pieces of advice. This isn't your artwork 100%. This is you're working for a company that's paying you to make the artwork. So you have to learn when enough is enough. You have to learn when to put in the time on like the main character of a game, or when you can just knock it out real quick on a background. So it's kind of a skill that you'll learn just from experience and from your lead.
All right. Well, listen, Javier, we want to thank you for your time today. And I know you and I will be chatting soon about potential opportunities with Grover.
Yes, I look forward to it. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to email me. I don't know, Mike, I can give you my email if you want to send it out.
Can I go ahead and put a link in here to your LinkedIn so people can maybe connect with you?
Sure.
Is that all right? All right. So I'm going to put that in the chat here, how to connect with Javier on LinkedIn. So again, thank you, Javier. And guys, we will be seeing a lot of you in Engage in just a few minutes for our award ceremony. Thank you, Javier.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Congratulations to all the grads. I wish you luck in the future, and keep at it. I know you'll succeed.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.